welcome to another lesson in RAMJB's Fighter Combat School. Today we are going to see some ACM. What does ACM stand for? It means Advanced Combat Maneuvers. We are going to see some basic ones, basic ACMs. When you are fighting, when you are in a common fight with a plane, or doesn't matter actually the plane, you have to keep in mind that just flat turning is not always the option. Sometimes you can do some other stuff, some different stuff. The basics of ACM is using all your control surfaces, which means ailerons, elevators and rudder, and also means using nature to your advantage. There's one force that's ever present while you're flying, which is the gravity force, the attraction Earth puts on your plane, and you can use that gravity to assist you in some maneuvers. Also, ACM are basically based around the concept of energy fighting. All planes, even Anglo's fighter, in a way are energy fighters, because once you are run out of speed and altitude, even the best storm fighter is really in a bad situation. So these maneuvers are going to be more or less orientated towards the idea of energy keeping and using energy to your advantage. How to turn on better turning planes using your larger energy bank account, so to speak. How to use energy to avoid getting caught, how to use energy to set up perfect shots on defenseless enemies, etc. So let's get started with some basic ones. And we start with the loop. The loop is a very basic maneuver which consists in, as you go straight, you pull on the elevator and you describe a vertical circle and exit it in the same way that you were moving initially. So yeah, it's that basic. It's just looping. Is that I guess all of you know this one. It's a very basic thing. It's actually not a combat maneuver. It is, you can use it in combat, but it's not specifically a combat maneuver. The thing with the loop is that you have to be careful. Your entry speed must be high enough that you don't stall and you don't run out of energy before reaching the B point in the picture. So because if while you are climbing you run out of speed, you won't be able to close the loop and you will be hanging in your prop. So, well, it's that simple. This is the loop. Next in line we have the half loop. There's some misunderstanding here. This maneuver is also known as the Immelman, but the Immelman is a whole different thing. The thing is that the actual Immelman, the true Immelman, the one that was created during World War I by Max Immelman, the guy who gave the name to the combat maneuver, is not really used anymore in modern combat. Why? Because it involves so low speeds that usually you don't have the option to pull it. But so during the history of air combat, the maneuvers got their names changed, and this one changed its name for the Immelman. Well, this is actually a half loop. This is not really an Immelman. We'll see the Immelman later. In this, basically what you do is that, a half loop. You enter as if you were going to do a loop, you go up, and when you are pointing your nose your upside down, you simply roll and straight at the plane and keep on going. The effect of this is trading speed for altitude and changing your direction immediately. This is not, I don't really use this in combat that much. Well, sometimes you do to set a pass on a higher target or something like that. But if you see my videos, if you see how I fly, I do this a lot while just roaming around the skies. If I want to change my direction, I go up and do a half loop. Why? Because this is a very conservative in energy way to change direction, to do a 180, to just change your direction from the front to the rear. It's very conservative in energy because you are winning altitude and you're trading your speed for altitude. If you just turn, what you are doing is burning your speed in a normal turn and not winning any energy back by altitude. So in the end, what you're doing is burning energy to turn. In this maneuver, of course, you burn some energy because the pull up costs some energy, but you are trading most of your speed for altitude. So it's a very energetic conservative movement, and one that you want to use a lot, not just when you are in combat, but just roaming around in the battlefield. So yeah, this is the half loop. Next in line we have the split S. This is by any means is actually the opposite of what we just saw. This is the opposite of the half loop. The split S is a maneuver where you are pointing one way, you roll upside down, you pull down, and when you are upside, you simply keep on going. This is totally the opposite of the other maneuver. This is also another way of changing directions by conserving some energy. It has some issues to it, and we'll get into it in a second. One of the things about energy management in a fighter plane is to remember that you always have a top speed. What does it mean? That well, if you are at top speed and you pull a split S, you are going to trade altitude for speed, and you're going to come out at a higher speed, but that speed is going to be lost in some time because you are over your top speed and drag is slowing you down. So this is a good maneuver to pull when you are not at top speed. What you are doing is trading some of your altitude for speed, and you're keeping it once you end up the maneuver because you are under your top speed and your plane is still accelerating. It's also a very effective way of trying to get some time and some separation from a bandit on your 6, because people don't really like to do a lot of altitude losing if they know their stuff. And in any case, most people don't really follow the maneuver. In arcade, most people use mouse 99% of the time. If you use keyboard and mouse, you're going to pull this maneuver perfectly, just as is in the screen. People who is trying to shoot you will try to adjust with mouse, so they won't roll down and they won't enter the let's call it downside loop part in the proper attitude, because they will be pointing upside down when you are pointing downside up. I don't know if I'm making myself understood. The thing is, as people try to fire using mouse only, they are going to lose you because they won't be able to follow your move. There's a couple of videos about this, the Focke-Wulf 190 that I'll put later in another plane analysis. So you'll see that, and I'll comment on that in the video. So don't worry, you'll see that in action. Another thing you want to use this maneuver for is to set a proper attack on a lower enemy. If you see a lower enemy, maybe 1000 meters, 2000 meters below you, if you go directly for him, and he's coming directly in your direction, what you're doing is to winning a frontal shot that's going to last very for a very brief time, because the closure speed is very high. He's moving your way, you are moving his way. Instead, if you let him pass underside you and you pull out a split test, what you are doing is dropping on his rear quarter, and you'll have a much longer time to fire away and to get a proper kill. So yeah, as you can see, this can be used both defensively and offensively. The split S. Remember always, you can pull this at any time, but if you end up in the 3 point in the picture over your top speed, you want to do something that keeps that speed and turns that extra speed over your top speed back into altitude. Maybe a zoom away, maybe zooming a bit, maybe climbing a bit, because if you keep on going in the horizontal, you are going to lose that extra speed, and the conservative nature of this maneuver, the energy conservative nature, is not going to be successful. Next in line, we have the Immelman Turn. I told you about this before. Now the Immelman is known as the half loop, but this was the original Immelman. This basically is another very conservative energy, and is an excellent maneuver to pull on very good on planes with very good rudder authority. This maneuver with time has turned into something called the Hammerhead. But well, the Hammerhead is a little bit more specific. We'll enter into that later, and I'll explain it in another picture. Basically, what this involves is you are going in for plane 1 is going for plane A. The plane A breaks into a very tight turn, and plane 1, instead of trying to follow, which won't be able because of the geometry of the engagement, and maybe because A turns better, goes directly upwards. And when the speed is slow enough, instead of keeping on pulling off the elevator, trying to do a loop, just use rudder to turn the plane from one direction to another one, from pointing directly upwards to pointing directly downwards, and dive down on the target from his rear quarter. The Immelman Turn, also called the Hammerhead, as I tell you, I later put a proper picture of a Hammerhead, can be pulled at any angle, as long as your plane is has good enough rudder authority. The closer to the vertical you pull it, the better. This is one of the things. Why this maneuver works so well? Well, one of the things about flight combat and about plane-to-plane flight is to understand that your wings will be a problem for you when you are at very low speeds, because the wings will create lower lift as the slower you go. And with planes that don't turn very well with very high wind loadings, to pull a move in the pitch plane, in the pitch axis, is going to be very hard at very slow speeds. Why? Because you are fighting your tendency to stall. The wings will stall, and you probably will enter a stall or even a spin. In arcade, you don't have to worry about this, but in arcade you have an instructor that restricts your commands in the pitch axis when you are close to a stall. In other words, once your speed starts to be low enough, you won't be able to move in the pitch axis. Why? Because otherwise you will stall your plane. If you use rudder, however, you are not messing with the pitch axis. You are not messing with your angle of attack. You saw what angle of attack was in another of the lessons. If you are not messing with your angle of attacks, your danger of running into stall is much lower, because you won't have problems with the wind losing, the air losing its proper flow over the wings. Also, it's very effective because while elevators lose a lot of authority at low speeds, rudder usually keeps its authority at very slow speeds. They are designed to do that. Why? Because propeller planes in arcade, again, you are not going to notice it, but propeller planes have torque. The engine creates a gyroscopic effect when you change your power outputs, and turns to yaw your plane one side or another, depending on the way the propeller is turning. And so in takeoffs and landings, which involve very slow speeds, you want to keep that yaw under control, and to do that you need your rudder. So rudders are designed to keep a very high authority at very slow speeds. So while you are in the vertical, pure vertical, let's say you are in a plane at 80 kilometers per hour in the vertical. At that speed you simply can't pitch up or down because you don't have authority. You are simply wobbling around. But if you use your rudder, what you are going to do is to make a much brisker maneuver, because rudder still has a lot of authority while your elevators do not. Another thing to remember is that planes, at least World War II planes, modern planes are totally different, usually try to put its center of gravity in the front side of the plane. Why? Because it was a way to ensure the plane was stable enough and to keep it in control flight by a pilot. Modern day fighters usually have positive instability. That means that the plane is so unstable that the pilot can't control it. They fly with a system called fly-by-wire. The plane actually flies by a computer, and the pilot is giving the computer the instructions of what he wants to do, but the plane is actually flown by a computer. In World War II, there were no such luxuries, so all planes were naturally stable. In other words, they had to have the center of gravity forward enough, because otherwise they would be very unstable. If you are picture yourself in a perfect vertical maneuver and you are at 80 kilometers per hour and your center of gravity is in front of you. This means that as soon as you go out of the vertical, that center of gravity is going to pull your nose down instantly by itself. If you help it with rudder, it's going to happen much easier. So that's why this weapon, this ACM works, because if you go up and you lose almost all your speed and you keep your rudder authority on, you can yaw out of the nose up and enter an instant nose down, pointing the other way. Of course, this means that you can do almost instant reversals in the vertical. And also what this means is that if you go vertical against a guy who's a much better turner than you and he's turning, you can actually use the vertical to turn inside him, because you select the direction you are going to get out from. We'll see more of that later. But in the meantime, this is the Immelman Turn or Hammerhead, which we are going to see actually now to see the differences. And there we have it, the Hammerhead. The Hammerhead, well, the picture is a little bit sad, but you'll get the notice. The Hammerhead is like an Immelman, but in a pure vertical. If you have an angle, instead of going straightly up, you are doing an Immelman. If you go straight up and you use your rudder to point your nose down, you are doing a Hammerhead. Basically, that's all for it. I explained it before in the Immelman, so you'll know exactly what to do. One of the things you have to remember, I told you about torque. I don't really know up to which point in arcade torque is modeled or is just dampened by instructor. But I do know that in for real and historical torque is an issue if you don't have the instructor on. So you are going to experience torque. Torque is a gyroscopic effect that really what means is that depending on the direction your propeller is turning, you tend to yaw to one side or to another. Most of the planes have a torque effect towards the left, but some of them have opposite turning propeller and have torque effect going to the right. Basically, you want to try to pull hammerheads using left rudder in all planes, but the Yakoleves, which I think all of them have right side torque, the Typhoon, which also has inverse torque, and well, when it's into the game, the Spitfire 14 and the Spitfire 12, the Griffon engine had propeller turning the opposite way as the usual ones. So just use the proper rudder to help your torque pull your nose around. And that's mostly it about the Hammerhead. We'll see another variation of this. This is what's called the tail slip. You see a series of maneuvers which do exactly the same. Basically, what this means, just focus yourself on the part of where says transition to cruise flight. A tail slip, what means is to pull a hammerhead, but don't use rudder, other than that to keep your plane in a perfect nose-up attitude. And when the plane starts falling, it's going to fall tail first. Then use rudder, and the tail will move out of the way and bring the nose down. It's just a way to exhaust all the forward motion you have and every single bit of speed you have, and trade it into altitude to then do exactly the same as a hammerhead, but later, instead of when you are moving up, when you are already moving down. The thing about this maneuver is that it's very, very, very hard to pull, at least if you are not using joystick and rudders. Do not try to use this using mouse and keyboard, because what you are going to end up doing is nothing similar to a tail slip. Simply you don't have enough control over your control surfaces to control it. But if you are using a joystick, you can use this. Why do you want to use this and not a hammerhead? Well, maybe you want to win a little bit of time to get the guy behind you, lose more speed, and be floating around when you fall down on him. Maybe you simply want to avoid one guy and force him to overshoot. This is a very good way to do that. There are several reasons why to do this instead of a hammerhead, but it's very tough to do. And if you are slightly misaligned with the vertical, if your nose is not pointing directly outwards, you are going to lose all the control. So be very careful with this one. I actually put this more as an illustrative maneuver, that one that you will be able to do in the battlefield, because it's really, really, really hard to pull. Next in line we have the Yo-Yos. The Yo-Yos are actually pretty well known. They are some of the most widely known air combat maneuvers in the world of air simulators. Basically, in a yo-yo, what you are doing is using your excess speed over an enemy to keep yourself within his better turn radius by using energy to your advantage. Picture, well, in the picture you can see that there are two planes, and one of them is coming very, very, very fast towards the second one. The second one is going to be able to pull a much tighter turn because he's slower, and maybe because he's at a better turner as well. So what you do in a high yo-yo is to use your excess speed to surpass him, move away, and climb. And once enough separation has been created, roll a bit down to the enemy and pull on the stick to fall down on him. It's basically that. What you are doing in this is to both getting yourself stuck on the enemy 6 and to avoid an overshoot, because that's pretty dangerous. And also what it means is that you are keeping your energy up. Why? Because if you try to stick into an enemy 6 by chopping down your throttle and breaking your speed, maybe what you achieve is to end up in the enemy's tail, but you are sacrificing all your energy to do so. And that's something you can do in a better turning plane, saying I'm in a Spitfire and I'm attacking a Focke-Wulf 190. Maybe I want to chop down throttle to stay in his 6. Why? Because he's not going to be able to outturn me, and once I'm stuck on his 6, he's going to die. But just think of the opposite. I'm in a 190 and I have a Spitfire in front of me. If I want to chop throttle and follow down on his 6, I'm giving him the initiative because he turns better than me. So once I'm stuck on his 6 and he starts to break turn, I'm not going to be able to follow him in his turn, and he's going to eventually outturn me and kill me. So what you do with this is conserve your energy up, which is always a wise thing, even if you are in a better turning plane. Why? Because you are not in a 1 versus 1 fight. You are in a battle with a lot of enemy fighters, and if you are a bit distracted and someone else gets close to you, you want to have as much energy as possible. So what you do here is use your extra speed, your excess speed, to blaze past the enemy, win some lateral separation while going up, trading some of your excess speed for altitude, roll towards the enemy plane while he is turning, and then pull down on him. In the pull down phase, what you are doing is trading altitude for speed. So basically what you are conserving energy while doing a turn, because you are involving the vertical here. Also, there's another benefit here, is that while you are turning in the vertical downwards, gravity assists your turn, which means that you are going to turn better if you are coming down than if you are going up. So basically what you achieve here is, first, keeping your energy up, which is cool because you always want to have as much energy as possible. And second, turning better, because actually in the second half of the maneuver you are going to turn much tighter for several reasons. First, gravity assists you, and second, you will be slower. And if you have a lot of excess speed, your plane won't turn as well as if you are at a moderate speed. So there you go. This is the high yo-yo. And finally, for today, because this has been long enough and there are enough ACMs for you to study and to learn, we'll see more of this in future lessons, don't worry. Finally, for today, we are going to see the low yo-yo, which is the opposite of the last one. In the last one, we saw what we can do when we have a huge extra speed and we are closing so fast to the enemy that we are going to overshoot. The low yo-yo is to be played in the other role, when you are not closing fast enough and you want a boost of extra speed to close for a shooting angle. In this version, what you do is just the opposite of the last one. Instead of going up and zooming away, what you do is following the enemy turn but using the vertical to go lower than him. You are trading some altitude for speed, which means you are conserving energy, first of all. Second of all, you are winning speed, so your closure rate will increase. Of course, you are not going directly for him, which means that your extra speed is not going to be as effective as if you were going directly for him. But don't worry, still you are winning speed and you are winning an angle. You are actually, again, turning with gravity assisting you, and when you decide to, when you see it's the moment, you roll upside and come up again using your extra speed, trading it for altitude and coming in with a good angle for a shot. Actually, these both maneuvers, the high yo-yo and the low yo-yo, can also be used in the defensive to improve your ability to turn in a tight situation. Usually the low yo-yo is better in the defensive because it means you keep your speed up, and keeping your speed up is very important while you have one guy in your six. The high yo-yo can be used using it with a little bit of throttle chopping to force an overshoot. There are a lot of basic different scenarios you can put these ACMs to work. Also, they are, so to speak, they are the opposite to each other. If you are in a overshoot situation and you pull a high yo-yo and the other guy, instead of flat turning, goes into a low yo-yo, you are tied. You are tied because actually he's using also an energy conserving maneuver. He's also using gravity to pull his turn, and he's a good pilot. A good way to know if the guy in front of you is a good pilot or not is to see what maneuvers is he pulling. If he's just wandering around turning with mouse, he's just a very bad pilot. If he's pulling ACM, you know you are in front of a very good pilot, and that also helps in combat because you keep a lot more attention of what the enemy is doing if you know if the other guy is a good guy, a good pilot. So well, that's all for now. That's all for today. That's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned something. I hope you saw something interesting to use in your fights, and there will be more of this, don't worry. There will be more ACM lessons in the future, so stay tuned for them. Give me the thumbs up if you like this video. If you haven't done yet, subscribe, and if you want to tell me anything, whatever you want to do so in the comment section below on in my Facebook page. Thank you very much for watching, and see you later.